During high school, our friend group was the most popular one. There were 6 members: me, Sophia, Chloe, Ella, Oliver, and James. At first, it was just me, Sophia, Chloe, and Ella, but then Chloe started to date James, so James and his best friend Oliver tagged along in our group as well. James and Chloe were the ideal couple in our class. They used to sit together, eat together, go everywhere together, and they even used to be absent on the same day. We were annoyed by these lovebirds. But one day, all of a sudden, James stopped coming to school. Chloe told us that he didn't inform her about this either. We went to ask teachers, and they told us that his parents found a note which said that he wanted to take a break from everything and will be back within a month. Chloe was heartbroken because she loved James. She started to stay silent, mostly lost in her own thought. We tried multiple attempts to cheer her up, but it was of no use. Gradually, she started distancing herself from us. Still, Oliver and I used to try having at least small talk with her, but she managed to completely cut herself from the group. Days went by, and we started to notice changes in Chloe's behavior. For example, suddenly she would look panicked and start sweating, or she would sleep during the class and suddenly wake up as if she had just had a nightmare. We started to grow worried, so we asked her. Olivia approached her first, saying, "Hey Chloe, can we talk to you for a minute?" She nodded, and I said, "Listen, we are worried about you, and if anything is bothering you, you know you can talk to us, right?" She looked at us and said, while faking a smile, "Yes, of course, and no, don't worry, I'm all right." She left after saying that. We could tell that something was wrong with her. We just did not know what and how to help her. After a few days, when we were leaving after school, a girl named Kara fell from the top floor of our school building. Everyone started to scream. The teachers came and called an ambulance. On the way to the hospital, she died. The school declared it an accident, but Kara's parents insisted on an investigation. So the investigation started. It was found that the last dialed number on Kara's phone was Chloe's. Chloe was called for questioning, but she denied it, saying she promised to meet her, but before they could meet, she died. Other students who were close to Kara were called in for questioning. They told the police that they did see Kara approaching Chloe sometimes. I remember that before James left school, he also saw Kara coming to Chloe once and handing her something, but Chloe threw it without even seeing it. They checked the CCTV installed near the stairs, and Chloe was seen going toward the terrace. Chloe became the main suspect and was called again for questioning. She kept denying about killing Kara. She eventually broke down and started crying. "I did not kill her. I was only trying to ask her about James," she said while sobbing. She told the police about what happened before Kara's death and after James's disappearance. 2 days after James stopped coming to school, Chloe found a picture of James. He was unconscious. His legs and hands were tied. Chloe panicked and decided to report this and put the picture in her locker. When she checked again, the picture wasn't there, but instead there was a note saying, "Don't try to act over smart by telling this to anyone." Chloe got scared and did not tell anyone. The next day, she found a package which contained part of James's finger, and there was a note, "A gift for you." Chloe screamed and threw it. She started to have nightmares about it. The notes kept coming with instructions written over it. The note also threatened her that if she tells anyone, the rest of her friends, along with James, will die. That was the time when she started to distance herself from us. She received a flower along with the note, which was delivered at her address. The note said, "If you want me to spare James, accept my love." The next day, Kara asked Chloe out, but Chloe was too panicked from all those anonymous letters and threats that she instantly refused. That night, before school was about to end, she received a call from Kara asking her to come to the rooftop if she wants to know about James. And when Chloe went there, Kara revealed it was her sending the threat messages all along. Kara told her that she was in love with her and often stalked her. She also found out combination codes for her locker and put a letter to confess her feelings. But Chloe never saw the letter. And one day, she announced dating James. Kara felt heartbroken and decided to end her life, but could not. And one day, she decided she would confess her feelings no matter what. She wrote a letter and handed it to Chloe, but Chloe threw it without even checking. When Chloe threw her love letter, it made her so angry that one day when James was walking home through a secluded area, she hit on his head with a baseball bat and kidnapped him. She put him on lots of drugs so that he could not escape. She then started to send Chloe anonymous letters. They started arguing, and when Chloe said she is going to report this right away and turned, Kara grabbed her by the hand. When Chloe was trying to pull her hand away from her, she accidentally fell. Chloe got so panicked that she ran from there. Police searched and found James in an abandoned building near Kara's house. He was on the effects of drugs. When he came to his senses, police questioned him and found that Chloe was right. After further investigation, Chloe was found innocent, and Kara's death was declared an accident. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. Everybody in school knew Natasha was different, I suppose different as being weird. When you live in a town where everyone around you acts and looks very much the same, a girl like her would of course stand out. I'd have to describe her as a golf girl, if that term is even still used. Her skin had a naturally pale tone, but she did all she could to make sure it never got any darker. The Victorian parasol she carried everywhere with her blocked out any possible rays of sun from touching her porcelain-like skin, as if her skin and 100-year-old umbrella didn't make her stand out. Her choice of clothing just made her appear stranger to most. I don't think Naughty, as we called her, owned any color but black, from her coal-black hair all the way down to the tips of her patent leather boots. Only the chunkiness of her skin offered any contrast. If you were to guess that she was quiet and reserved, you wouldn't be far off. When she did speak, it was only in reaction to another's rude remarks. Even then, she was a girl of few words. She had a cutting type of wit. It didn't take her long to put folks in their place. Most people never got to see the other side of her. This version of Naughty was terrifying and most likely the cause of her future ghoulish behavior. Before I get to the meat and potatoes of my story, I want to warn my readers. If you are triggered or get excessively upset about the subject of animals getting hurt, stop here. Although I will try to be as family-friendly as my description is possible. Some things just have to be said. You've been warned. With that out of the way, I'll finally get to the heart of the matter. Despite knowing not everyone who looks and dresses like Naughty are capable of doing the things she did, I think that look was a reflection of how she felt inside. I would never excuse her behavior, but coming from someone who would know her rather intimately, she had to have struggled with that evil side of her. The Naughty I knew was an intelligent and sensitive person. Nonetheless, she harbored a deep-seated anger that drove her to commit a string of unforgivable acts. I never learned exactly what caused it, but I suspect it stemmed from some form of abuse she suffered. I foolishly asked about her grandfather on one occasion. This regular everyday question cost a 30-minute triad. Safe to say, she wasn't a good person. This is likely what led to her compulsion to have power over another living thing. I was already off for school for my first year of college. Nadia, who was a year younger than me, was a senior. We were still on speaking terms after a separation, but I had not heard from her for a few months. When I had a spare moment, I called to catch up. Her mother answered her phone and said this naturally surprised me. My surprise soon turned to concern when I was told that Nadia wasn't around anymore. I was shocked and asked what happened, expecting her to say that she passed. Miss Ellis Coley stated that Nadia had not died, but she wouldn't be free to speak to me ever again. Then she quickly said goodbye and hung up. I was confused and hungry for answers. So I called a friend who had stayed behind the work. The story I heard still chills me to this day. My friend's dad was a retired cop and still had a lot of contacts inside the department. I knew he'd probably know what happened. All of the details concerning her punishment were hazy, but the gruesomeness of her crimes were not. The story goes something like this. Not long after her and I separated, people's cats began to disappear. The ones that were eventually found, the bodies had been drained of blood and ripped to pieces. Initially, the deaths were attributed to a coyote or dog attack, with no blood found at the scene. The theory didn't hold up. A few of the wackier folks around town even claimed the deaths were the work of the chupacabra. A total of 22 pets will be lost to the cat slasher in all. Owners who had once let their cats out began keeping their pets in, and neighbors wanted their fellow citizens with distaste and distrust. Then, late one evening, the true culprit was caught in the act. A man was out walking his dog when he took notice of a car driving slowly up and down the street. It passed him several times, but he assumed the driver was searching for a particular address. This changed when he turned onto a new street and witnessed the driver get out and attempt to catch a cat. When the driver realized they'd been seen, they returned to the car and sped away. It was too late though. The man copied down the license plate number and turned it into the police. The crime that hadn't had much attention from the police until then drew much more interest when the car's owner was discovered. Natasha was no stranger to the police. She'd had multiple complaints filed against her in the past. Most were actually just baseless accusations from older people who distressed or simply because she looked different. She's a devil worshiper and other equally stupid fantasies. However, she'd also been caught shoplifting once or twice. Fortunately for her, she had some mysterious family connections that made everything go away. Things wouldn't be any different this time. Despite admitting everything to the cops that interviewed her, often in gory detail, she'd be let off with no repercussions. In fact, the press didn't even mention a suspect had been arrested. Despite knowing her name and all that was said, it was almost as if none of it had even happened. The disappearance has just stopped, and almost nobody even knew why. At first, I was in complete shock, but as time passed, it began to make sense. Not he had always hated cats. I never discovered why, but something major had to have occurred to cause her behavior. And before anyone asks if she took this dark turn because of our breakup, just forget it. She was more than happy to be free again. In fact, I may have been the only thing keeping her from going down that path sooner. For all I know, it had already started prior to our separation and nobody had noticed. I'm guilt-free, my friend. During my visits back home, the subject was brought up a few times. One guy even said he had heard she had been drinking the blood of the cats. She wasn't beyond doing something so crazy, but the girl I knew would have thought something so ceremonial was stupid. Through the grapevine, I did eventually discover where she had gone. Mere days after her release, she was shipped off to a mental health facility out west. What happened to her after that? I have no clue. Despite the terrible and cruel things she did, I still catch myself hoping she'll call from time to time. Mostly, I just want to hear her explanation. Whether I do or not, I hope she gets the help she needs. I'd hate to know more people's pets could be in danger because she couldn't resolve the problems from her past. If she does contact me, I'll post an update. Watch this line and stay tuned. I'm just as morbidly curious as you. Custer County, Oklahoma. A small county of not so diverse people. It's not the very lavish town that people think it is, and probably isn't the richest. One would say that what people have here is a life paced, slow, and easy when it comes to all the shenanigans life is about now. Now, this story dates back to the night of the prom in '89 in Custer County High School. It wasn't the very best school that one would think of. The class of '89, on the other hand, was the most promising class that the school has ever had. It was the academic and the social peak that the class of '89 brought to the Custer County. And in general, it was the four friends who were the bright, young, charming minds of Custer County. The future faces of the place that made everyone proud of their little town. Frank Abigail Jr., son of a single father. His mother died of lung cancer at a very young age, and he grew up with his father, a great man making an honest living as a physics teacher, and the very source of all the academic brilliance that Frank Jr. was praised for. Frank Jr. wanted to be an astronomer and work for NASA, exploring other worlds and studying stars. Now, on the contrary, there was Christian. The bond that Frank Jr. and Christian held was stronger than that of blood. They were friends, but they were stronger than any pair of brothers could. The only difference was Christian was deep-rooted. He loved the very dirt he walked on. He wanted to be a farmer and was highly involved with his father in all the farming and agriculture. He always was deep-rooted. Frank and Christian spent a whole lot of time together, and their friendship dated back to the very first time that Franks came into the town. Together, they celebrated their achievements, and together, they went through all the grief. The county people knew that Frank and Christian cannot be found anywhere separated. They were always together, and their friendship was an example of character. But it wasn't just Frank and Christian. Their bond was shared along with Claire and Doug. Claire and Doug were the power couple of Custer County High School, and together, these four were the most popular students of the school, and to everyone's surprise, kindest and most helpful too. Claire was the only daughter of the industrialist of the town, and Doug the son of the editor of the local Custer County newspaper. Despite the confrontations and differences of thoughts between both their parents, Claire and Doug were very much in love and were ready to spend their whole life together. Doug was about to go to New York to follow into his father's footprint and become a journalist, and Claire just wanted to be with him. It was the night of the prom of '89, the biggest event in their life, and every single student in Custer High was pretty excited about it. It was the last prom for Frank and his friends. After this, they were all moving to college, and probably not be together for a long time. It was an emotional and a really special night for all of them. They all gathered together at Claire's house and went together to the prom. Despite their kind nature and goodness, their friendship was loathed by many. They all arrived at prom, and it was magical, with the lights and the music. The prom seemed like a perfect send-off to their old life, and a great welcome party for the new transitions that they were about to get into. They all started dancing, and Doug noticed that one of their classmates was being pushed in by Riley. Riley was the typical bully, and he was also the mayor's only son, so nobody messed with him, not even the teachers. Doug saw Riley pushing over a kid out of the hall, so he decided to follow them. And Frank, Christian, and Claire, as usual, followed Doug. They soon left the hall and entered the gallery. Following Doug, they were all behind the school's canteen and outside of school. Doug confronted, as Riley was busy harassing the boy. Frank Jr., Christian, and Claire followed. Now they all gathered in the empty parking lot of the school. It was dark, and the loud noise of music was muffled into the silence of the night outside. They confronted Riley and his friends, and somehow managed to stop them from bullying the poor kid. They went back to the party, but Riley and his friends were pissed. They decided to take revenge on Doug and his friends. The prom was at its peak, and they were waiting for the opportunity, and they soon got one. They snuck into the ladies' washroom and waited behind closed doors for Claire to come. As soon as she entered, they all jumped on her and held her mouth shut and grabbed her. Riley came in close and forcefully kissed her and grabbed her from behind. Emily, one of the classmates of Claire, entered the washroom and saw that she walked away from the scene and ran to tell it to Doug and alert the authorities. Doug, Frank, and Christian ran towards the washroom and barged in. Riley was forcefully kissing her as Claire was crying and trying to break free. They barged in and fight broke in, and they started fighting. And soon, the authorities were alerted and the prom got canceled. Even after Claire's statement, Riley was not convicted for the charges of sexual assault and attempted rape. Claire was traumatized by the whole incident and wallowed more and more into the darkness, but her friends were always by her side. Doug held her and loved her even more, and Christian and Frank stood by her side every second. Seeing Riley walk free made all of them angry, and they decided that they shall punish Riley instead, and they will become the law if the law doesn't help them. They were witnessing that the fact that Riley was not convicted made him even more confident about his invincibility and lacking a justice system. They devised a plan to put an end to this before leaving the town. They made a fake invitation for a party at the Foss Reservoir and made sure that Riley and his friends got that. After confirming, they waited at the three-way junction for all of them to arrive. It was a night, and Riley and his friends were driving across the three-way junction. As soon as they were about to take the turn away from Foss Reservoir, a truck collided with them with the force, and their car was pushed towards the edges. Riley's friend, who was on the front passenger seat, died on the first impact. Riley was able to make out the face of the driver. It was Claire, and Doug was right there beside her. And on the rear, it was Frank and Christian. Claire pulled the reverse, and with another impact, the car went on to drop into the reservoir, along with every single one of them. Claire, Doug, Frank, and Christian stepped out of the car to see if there were any survivors. They stepped down to the ridge to find that Riley made it out of the car on time, and he was ducking on the ridge. They all started chasing Riley, and wounded and in shock, Riley started running. After 15 minutes, they were able to corner him. That is when Doug hit Riley, and Frank and Christian held him. Claire took out the blade from the car and went on closer to Riley and stabbed him in the scrotum. Riley was crying in pain. On his knees, his hands were between his legs, and he was pleading and begging. Doug took out a recorder and told him to confess all the things that he has done, and to confess everything that his father did to protect him. And it was the only way that Riley would walk out of there alive. Without hesitation, Riley confessed to everything. Even Claire, Doug, Frank, and Christian were disgusted by all the things that he had done, and were disappointed that his father let him walk away from all these crimes. They told him to stand up and walk away. As Riley was walking away, they looked at each other, and after a while, noise of a big splash was heard around, as if someone had jumped into the reservoir. The next few days, a copy of the tape of Riley's confession was sent to different media outlets in and outside Oklahoma. The missing report of Riley and his friends was now piled under the controversy of his father, and all the arrests and paperwork that it brought them. 20 years later, a diver found a car rusted away in the depth of Foss River, and in it were the skeleton of Riley and his friends. What remains a big mystery is how did the body of Riley end up in the car? Claire and Doug got married, moved to England, and are still living there with their 2 daughters. Frank Abigail Jr. went on to become an astronaut at NASA. While I am still living in Oklahoma, I found my love for storytelling, and now I am the chief editor at the local newspaper in Custer High.